Okay, Colleen Gorman here of Re-Indigenizing Minds, and today we will be going over planetary concepts with Roger Colty Quinnell.
Hello, everybody out there in internet land. This is a supplement to the video I just put out there. That's how to plot the four inner planets. That one is very informational and all of that, but it's all text if you notice. No, not even a soundtrack, and it just didn't seem right. So I felt like I needed to do another presentations, but this one with me talking about it and me going into more detail about it, so we could understand, well, how the universe operates according to the 260-day sacred calendar, which is one of the presentations we're planning to do on Patreon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you by example how to use 13 and the 260-day calendar to plot the four inner planets that are inside, or in other words, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. And this works for all the other planets, all the way to Pluto and two objects beyond that. But to make it easier for everybody to understand, I'm going to use the four inner planets, so I won't be going on for, 2 hours on this presentation. With the four inner planets, so it's just another example to show you how this calendar and 13 is utilized to plot these objects as they go around the sun, as well as plotting the sun itself. So here we go. So this is the presentation I'm going to be doing on how to plot the four inner planets using the 260-day sacred calendar. And here we go. First, what I'm going to do is open up with part of the presentation that I already did, which is what I just said right now. How to predict planetary orbits with the sacred 260-day calendar, and how to use 13 to plot the four inner planets, like I just said, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. So to make it easier, what I'll do is I'll get the first planet, the number that I'll find for you, which would be Mercury. So this is how to use 13 to predict the orbit of Mercury. Mercury's orbit, 13 times 9 equals 117 days. It takes 117 days in the sacred calendar for Mercury to make a complete orbit back to itself there. So that's Mercury's orbit, using 13 times 9. And then you're going to wonder, I'm going to show you what is a 13 circle that's equally divided, and I'm going to explain how these 9 days fit in within this 13. And I'm going to do that right now. So you look at my planetary pie, which is really weird for calling it that, which because it's like, or pizza even, my planetary pizza. Each slice is equal, and there's 13 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. See? And each of these pizza slices, you look at it, that there's 9 days, and there's Mercury. See? 9 days, 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 back to itself. So that's Mercury. Now I'm going to show you next is the orbit for how it works with Venus. So Venus is an interesting planet in the sense that it has one of the longer orbital next to Mars, which is 585 days. But Venus's orbit using 13, back to that 13 again, is 13 times 45 days equals 585 days. So it's 45 days per one of those slices that I showed you a little earlier. As a matter of fact, I'll just show you the slice. It'll be easier that way than me trying to explain it, because that's the hard part, is trying to explain the doggone thing. So back to what I was saying about my planetary pizza here and slices again. Back to my 13 circle again. As you can see, Venus is 13 times 45 days, 585 days. 45, 45, 45, 45, 45, 45, 45, 45, 45, 45, 45, 45, 45. And it comes back to itself. So that's the 13 times 45 for Venus. Now I'm going to show you the one for Earth, good old Earth. Earth has a number that's interesting, that has to do with the seasons, in a sense. Earth's orbit, there's that 13 again. 13 times 28 days equals 364 days. And what I was saying about the 364 days is that with this number, it could be divided into half and into quarters, which the modern you can't do with a 3.6, 0.25 system, all of that. And 364 is interesting too, because it's used to predict the four seasons. So you know when to plant and harvest, and when to come out of the cold, and when it's going to get hot. How do I know that? Well, 13 times 28 equals 364 days. But if you take 91 days, which is a season, and you times it by 4 seasons, it gives you 364 days. So you can figure out all the seasons by using this Earth number. So that's the interesting thing about Earth, and how it utilizes it with our 4 seasons that we have here on the planet. The next one I'm going to do is going to be Mars. Mars itself Mars itself is an interesting planet because it has to do with the sacred number, which and the sacred calendar. Mars orbit, there's that 13 again. 13 times 60 equals 780 days, which is how long it takes for it to go in an orbit on that. So there's 60 days in each of the sections there. Mars is interesting because 13 times 60 makes 780 days, but the sacred calendar is 260 days on the calendar. If you take 260 days and you times it by 3, it gives you 780 days. And it's the only planet that does that of all of the 13 objects out there. It's the only one that that has it where you could use this 260 sacred numbers, and it'll come to the exact orbit of a planet. There's something special about this, why it's doing that. But I just wanted to point that out, that the orbit of 780 days can be also calculated by using the 260 of the sacred calendar times 3, and it comes out to the same number. So this is Mars orbit. So now that you got an example of the inner planets and how they work, I'm going to show you the last one for pi for Mars, and then I'll now show you another chart. This is Mars again. There's that 13 times 60 equals 780 days in an orbit. See? 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, back to itself. So this is how long it takes for an orbit. Now with that in mind, with everything that's said here, I'm going to show you another planetary pie. But this one's going to explain how But this one's going to explain how these numbers fit into our universe. Well, I should say our indigenous universe, because I can't say our modern universe because they use 12. So I guess I'm probably right saying our indigenous universe. Maybe down the road they'll adopt this so they find out that I'm right. But remember I was talking about Mercury, and that's 13 times 9 is 117 days. There's Mercury, 117 days. In other words, back to itself. There's Venus, 585 days. It goes all back to itself. There's Earth, 364 days, all the way back to itself. There's Mars right here, 780 days. We're just talking about it. 780 days, and it's back to itself. Jupiter, 397.8 days, and then it's back to itself. Saturn, 378.8 days, and you go up, and Saturn will go all the way back to itself. Neptune, 367.9 days, and you go, and it comes back to itself. Uranus, and it's 366.6 days, and it'll go all the way back to itself. Pluto, 366.6 days, and you go all the way around, and it comes back to itself. And that's where I'm going to need help with researchers, because see these question marks? Those are the objects that are beyond, the two that are beyond Pluto. See, there's Pluto. There's the one object I was talking about. There's the two objects I was talking about. So that fills the planetary things, but I got to fill in these two blanks. So I need people to help me do the research to figure out what these last two planets are right here. Or I shouldn't say planets, they're objects more correctly. So these two are for the question marks are for those two that aren't, known yet. But then we get to the moon. Why the moon? Because the moon has a 13 times 27, which is 351 days. And why is that important? Well, because when the moon, and you use that cycle, it can be used to figure out and calculate cycles of the eclipses of the sun and the moon, or in other words, solar and lunar eclipses are likely to happen every 351 days. So when you use this and it goes all the way around back to itself, there's more likely going to be an eclipse of the sun or the moon if it's in this cycle. When it comes back to itself, either the sun or the moon is going to be in front of itself. It might be the sun, it'll be a lunar eclipse. It might be the moon, and it's a solar eclipse. Either way, it's going to happen on that 351 days. 13 times 27, which is 351. And now I was telling you that even the sun is in this thing. There's the sun. Colleen could verify this. What cycles of days does the sun work in, Colleen?
It issues a solar flare regularly every 13 days.
There it is. Sun, 13 days. And what does that mean? That means that all of my planetary pizza, that this is the cycle of the sun as it goes through this cycle. It starts here. This is the sun going through its 13 phases. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, Phase 4, Phase 5, Phase 6, Phase 7, Phase 8, Phase 9, Phase 10, Phase 11, Phase 12, Phase 13. And that's the whole entire cycle for the sun in a 13-day period as it goes through its cycle. So everything is laid out on these 13s according to the sacred calendar. And I hope that, by me explaining these, last but least, this number up here, if you take this 1,153,048 and you times it by that sacred number, 260 again, for the sacred calendar, it gives you 292,792,480 meters per second. In other words, this can calculate the speed of light. So not only does the calendar 260 do this for the planets, it even tells you how fast the beams of light are going. Boo! Man, that's meters per second. And with that in mind, I'm going to show one last thing here is Well, two. Well, two last things now that I'm thinking about it. This is the layout of how the zodiac and the planets should really be according to 13. This is all the layout I was talking about. Here's the zodiacs. There's the missing one that should be in here that represents the underworld. And up here is heaven, and this is the underworld. In other words, up and down. Oh, just can't even say it right. I put it back in there because it has to be 13 zodiacs. The 13 objects in our universe, which I just explained right now, and how they all operate according to the days and the orbit of the objects that go through time. And that's C351 used to predict solar and lunar eclipses. 13 times 1 days, and 20 days in zodiac for the sun. But basically what I just explained to you, it's just a chart on here. So now, 28 days per constellation for the 13 zodiacs. So if you use these zodiacs, and I'm going to show you, see the zodiacs that are 13
Yes.
zodiacs? I'm going to show the zodiac. I think it was this one. Oh, wait a minute. That's not the one. That's the other one. Oh, I had the wrong one. That's why it's here. I was thought I did. I needed part of my presentation. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
13 zodiacs.
hold on, hold on. Whoops. Ah. Sorry, technical difficulties.
Got it.
Yep.
Here's the planetary pizza of 13 with the 13 zodiacs applied to it. The 13 indigenous zodiacs were assigned numbers. They weren't given names like we use today. They were given numbers, not names. And the numbers go from odd to even and starting at 11. And then even numbers and ending at 13. In other words, 11, 9, 7, 5, 3, 1. There's the odd numbers. Even 12. See, there's Ozyphus, the underworld. Pleiades is up here, heaven. So you can see how it's laid out. So when you take the even numbers, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, and like I said, and ending at 13. And each of these are these zodiac starts with Taurus and 11. So you look at that at 20 days each. There's 28 days that Taurus is here, 28 days that it's in Aries, 28 days that it's in Pisces, 28 days that it's in Aquarius, 28 days that it's in Capricornus, 28 days in Sagittarius, 28 days in Ocypus, 28 days in Scorpius, 28 days in Libra, 28 days in Virgo, 28 days in Leo, 28 days in Cancer, 28 days in Gemini, and then you come all the way back to the starting point where it starts all over again when the Pleiades is directly overhead at midnight. And the underworld is directly down here in Ocypus where the serpent bearer is in this neck of the woods. And there's another interesting thing about Gemini. Has to do with possession of the equinoxes. All of the world cultures have stories of sacred twins, no matter where you're at. Whether you're in Rome, whether you're in Danae, whether you're in Mesoamerica, it don't matter. Everyone has twins in their stories, but nobody ever wonders why. I'm going to explain to you why. The twins are really interesting because what age are we going into right now? Out of what we're going into, it's the Fifth Dimension song.
I'm not sure. Is it the
You know,
the age of Aquarius?
Yeah, fifth dimension. I give you a big hand. Oh man,
Okay,
you listen to
fifth
classical music or
dimension.
what?
Sorry.
Anyway, over here. I'm gonna show this over here. See, this is Aquarius, where what I was trying to hint around Colleen about. This is the next precession of the equinox that's going to happen in 26,000 years, which is not unusual. Okay, now I'm going to explain why twins are in everybody's stories globally. Or, well, there's even in Egypt, there's these things that have 4 little things that they think are these energy machines, but they're really talking about this. What they're talking about is when the world began 520,000 years ago at the beginning of time. And how do I know that? Now watch this, Colleen. Put this thing here where I'm on with Aquarius. There's 4. Now watch. We're in Pisces right now, right?
Yes.
Okay, now watch. 1, 2. That's another precession before that. The one precession equinox before that one, Taurus. And for precession equinox that happened before that one, Gemini. And what's that Gemini? Where everything began. And what's that Gemini? Sacred twins. Class over.